So, my friends, I have two questions for you. Number one, are you ready for Lent? And the second question, are you excited about Lent? You know, I'm thinking that a week ago, if I had asked myself those two questions, I would have had interesting answers. First of all, I was hesitating getting ready for it because, to be honest with you, sometimes in the past I've dreaded the season of Lent. And the second question, there'd have been no possibility for me to be excited about Lent. And so here's what happened. You know, God always knows how to best us. And so I had a business conversation with a man whom I admire very much, one of the religious communities in our diocese, and I simply said to him, are you getting ready for Lent? And he said, well, I am. He said, but what I'm afraid of is that, you know, my resolutions will go by the wayside a week after Ash Wednesday. And I said, well, don't feel too bad, because sometimes that happens to me only days after Ash Wednesday. And while we laughed at each other's humanness, when I got off the phone and afterwards, I'm thinking to myself, why is it that I find myself resisting Lent? And God inspired me and said, well, maybe, David, the problem is you're focusing too much on the what of Lent, of what you need to be able to do, and you're missing the forest for the trees. Because the important question about Lent is the why. All the things that we take a look at, what we see as our disciplines for Lent, they're okay as long as they point to the why of what we are about. And as I got closer to Ash Wednesday, and as I was beginning to read over the scripture passages for today, God hit me between the eyes when I listened to, read, and was able to embrace Joel the prophet when he said, here it is, rend your hearts. Make sure that number one in what you do in this season is to look into your heart and to see where love is, especially love for God and love for others. And so then it started to come into focus for me. And I began to think about, what do I need to be able to do to deepen my love for Jesus? And I got to tell you, I started to think about two sins that are always a part of my confession. And to tell you the truth, I'm sick and tired of confessing those sins. And I need the power of God's grace to really help me not only overcome those sins, but to truly become holier. Because, you know, we've got a very powerful image as we begin this holy season. We think about our Jewish sisters and brothers and how God chose Moses to be the one to lead the people into the promised land. And then the second great image that we have is of our dear Jesus, who goes into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights to be with the Lord so that he doesn't disappoint his Father. And so, if you're experiencing any of those doubts about the season of Lent, or if you're here because it's a tradition that your family brought you up for, or you're here because you want to be signed with the cross of an ash, the issue that is before us is this. Are we really willing to put down our defenses to look, truly see how we can, in fact, become better people? Can we see that the purpose of Lent is not simply to get us ready for April 20th and the great feast of Easter, but to help us on our journey for that promised land that Jesus came to save us for, God's kingdom in heaven? And so, if you give me permission, allow me to share for a moment those struggles with those two sins in my life. You know, one sin that is a sin of omission, and the other a sin of commission. And let's be honest with each other. Let's talk turkey. You know, all of us are struggling with different things in our lives, and I know that I'm not the only person who experiences the frustration and the discouragement of going to confession and sometimes having to confess the same thing over and over again. But what's important about this holy season and everything that it affords us is not only the opportunity for us to be open and transparent to ourselves about what we're struggling with, but to invite God into the struggle. And so, what's your struggle in a sin of commission? Do you find yourself liking to gossip? Are you holding revenge in your heart against somebody? Do you wish somebody evil? Has your language come to a point of being out of control? Is the way that you and I live our lives becoming a scandal to somebody else? Are you mired in the invitations of pornography? Has alcohol got the best of you? Are you more interested in your own little world and forgetting about the world and the needs of others? And then what about those sins of omission? Do you and I find ourselves at times blocking out those people whom we don't like? Do we know that we need to forgive somebody, but we're not willing to do so? Do we know that we need to ask for forgiveness from others and aren't doing that either? Have we lost the importance of the art of listening instead of arguing our own point and dismissing somebody because they think differently, act differently, live differently than do we? I think you get the picture. The why of this season of Lent is truly to follow the charge of Joel, to look in to see what needs to change in your heart and mine. And I got to tell you, once the Lord really helped me and inspired me over the course of these last few days since I had that conversation with the man whom I admire so much, I got excited about Lent. And excited about the possibilities that maybe, for once in a long time, I will be able to give over to the Lord that sin of commission and that sin of omission that weigh me down and cause me discouragement. And you see, my sisters and brothers, when we take Jesus' three-point plan, the what of Lent, prayer, fasting, and good works, then whatever it is that we decide that we need to be able to do, we need to be able to do it for the why of Lent. To fall more deeply in love with Jesus. Pure and simple, period. Let me ask you once again, are you ready for Lent? Let me ask you again, are you excited about Lent? I ask you to pray for me as I pray for you, that our answer to both may be a resounding yes.